Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to day 2 of theCUBE's live coverage of the Red Hat Summit here in the Mile High City. I'm your host, Rebecca Knight, sitting alongside my co-host and analyst, Paul Gillin. Paul, we're talking about the future here. We're talking about modernization and virtualization, so many fun topics.
And virtualization is still a thing, you know?
It is.
The world is not moving entirely to containers.
No.
And that's something that we're going to talk about right now. It's called modern virtualization.
Modern virtualization, not old-fashioned virtualization.
Not your father's.
Exactly. So I'd like to welcome 2 new guests to the CUBE stage. We have Andrew Custard, he is the VP of Global Sales at Portworx. Welcome, Andrew.
It's great to be here, thanks for having us.
And Steve Gordon, he is the Senior Director, Product Management Hybrid Platforms at Red Hat. Thanks you so
for having
much,
me.
Steve. So I would love for you to start out by talking broad brush what you're seeing with some industry trends. I know you've done a little bit of research. You don't need to quote the research, but if you could give our viewers a sneak peek about what's on the minds of executives as they're thinking through some of these challenges.
Yeah, so I think there's 2 main relevant themes that we've been seeing. One is a little more longer standing, which is when we set out on this path with OpenShift virtualization, we anticipated that increasingly customers would be dealing with a mix of workloads, both containers, virtual machines, and then since then all the waves of technology that build on top of those, whether it's serverless or now AI, building on those fundamental compute blocks. So we went about building a platform that could cater to those types of workloads in one unified platform, one unified management solution. But then the other thing that's more recent that's happening is there is a market dynamic that's been introduced where customers are now evaluating their options for their virtualization estate that's been sitting there for 10 to 15 years. They have become very motivated to find ways to manage their risk and their cost of those environments going forward. And that's where we're having a lot of exciting discussions at events like this where top of mind for most of those customers is how can I move those workloads to a different platform in the most efficient way possible, because it's an area of their business where they weren't really expecting to pay more money in the near term. So they wanted to find out how they can do that efficiently without necessarily changing the application right now, but with a path to modernizing the application over time on a modern platform using the capabilities that provides.
What's driving that motivation? You said companies are really motivated right now. What's on their minds? What's the tension?
They have a specific cost pressure introduced by our competitors at VMware and Broadcom, where they are receiving varied signals on that side, and they're concerned about the overall impact that's going to have on their cost, either today or in the future as they look down beyond their current agreements. So that's where we see virtualization, as alluded to in the opening, it's been around for a long time at this point. It's very standardized in how it's been deployed, but you see customers reevaluating that situation where they're looking for a replacement vendor or a dual vendor strategy where they may not have been doing that 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So,
I think it also gets to a little bit of my apologies.
Go ahead.
Sometimes it also just gets to, that environment has been around for a long time. And the definition of what's possible in best practices has changed. You now have a lot of different ways you can be able to solve for the problem. And as those ideas of best practices sort of evolve, well, the responsibility of most CTOs is to be able to look and say, all right, are we building the best possible path? And I don't think they were forced to have that conversation, but now that they have, well, they need to look at it really thoughtfully and be able to come up with the one that gives them the greatest amount of flexibility, provides those transitions, and gives them a longer term, better platform.
So what is modern virtualization? How is it different from traditional virtualization?
Yeah, so when we look at how that works, we've really broken down and taken advantage of some of the capabilities and the way Linux virtualization works. So we've been working with Linux virtualization in its current form since about 2008. So we have a long history with the various components of that. And what we took advantage of is back when we started this project in late 2016 was looking at the fact that at the end of the day, the way that Linux virtualization works is it's simply a kernel module and a user space process. And the great thing about application containers is they can containerize any user space process. So we thought, well, why can't we put a virtual machine in a container and then use the same interfaces for deploying, managing, running those same applications on the same platform. And that's where we really have taken advantage now of not only running on one platform gives you the advantage from a management perspective, but then you connect to that entire ecosystem around cloud native technology where we have a lot of exciting new things you can do with virtual machine. You can include it in a service mesh, you can use it in a GitOps pipeline using adjacent cloud native technologies. And then with Portworx, this great story where you can also use that same cloud native storage solution across the containers and virtual machines as well, which is obviously storage is a critical capability for virtual machines.
So why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about this collaboration, Andrew?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's the greatest part about it is that you've got two leaders in the industry that are going through and working together to take some of the ambiguity out of what those next steps in the journey look like by coming together and defining what that best practice looks like, what the reference architecture looks like, what are the pros and cons of different transitions. One of the things that we've found really common is that, particularly when you come to virtual machines, data is often the more complicated side of it. And as you make those decisions and transitions, because you can move compute and applications a little easier. Moving applications that have a strong relationship to data, well, you've got to be a little bit more thoughtful. And oftentimes those applications are some of the most important in any enterprise. And that means that you've got to be able to work with vendors to be able, that can give you a view of, here's steps in the process that you can go through. Here's alternatives. Here's ways that you can architect things to deliver the best possible result. And I think that's the neatest thing about our relationship. I mean, not just ours, but the relationship between the two companies is, it's a complex problem. It'll be a significant journey for a lot of organizations, and they need vendors to work together and collaborate to take the risk out of that and make it simpler.
What kind of workloads are best left in VMs versus being moved to containers?
I think in a lot of cases when customers look at that, it's not so much about whether they're best left in VMs, but where am I going to spend that time modernizing or refactoring an application, or where am I going to leave that application as it is? It's not a spot where I want to invest at this point in time and I just want to keep it as a virtual machine. So that's where I alluded to earlier, it's a very practical thing for the customers. If they want to move the virtual machine now and continue to run it as is, that's fine on OpenShift. If they do want to refactor some of those applications because they are an area of investment or they have new things they want to do with them, they can do that too using all the capabilities built into the platform on top. So I think there's no right or wrong answer there. It depends on the customer's focus in terms of where they want to spend their time and energy. And we're happy to support them on that journey. And it is a journey, it is a multi-year thing in reality. I mean, we sometimes can be glib about this, but migrating large numbers of workloads, it's a very high risk, high visibility activity that people are rightfully cautious about how they go about planning and implementing that change.
I was just going to say, you're describing something that does sound so exceedingly complex that requires so much thought and consideration, and here are CTOs with a lot of different pressures and new motivations that are changing how they think about, as you said, what best practices are in these situations. I'd love you to talk about how you work with customers on these challenges, because it sounds as though they do need a lot of hand-holding along the way, because as you said, this is so complicated.
Yeah, so the initial point for us is we do what we call a virtualization roadshow, where we go out to customers and it's in the lab downstairs at this event as well, where we basically provision an environment and get them hands-on with the solution straight away, walk them through the migration toolkit for virtualization, which is how you actually move a virtual machine from an existing platform to OpenShift, including converting the disk, provisioning the storage, and doing all of that, and getting them really hands-on first and foremost to get over that initial kind of, what is this going to look like for me reaction. And then beyond that, we go into a deeper discovery workshop where we do that workload analysis and deeper look at the environment. There is a lot of consistency in terms of how people provision virtualization, storage, and networking at this point, but there are differences. So that discovery workshop is where we really extract those differences and work with the customer to come up with a plan and an architecture. And really critically, as we do that, analyze which partner solutions augment the Red Hat solution, part of the solution, to build a full functioning environment for their virtualization needs. And again, that's where we lean on Portworx and other partners to build out that solution where we think it's better together overall as a solution for the customer's needs.
There's a significant part for us, which is, simplest expressed, is at one point you looked at Kubernetes and tried to ask the question of, I don't know, what are we going to do that's stateful? Now, when you think about best practices and strategies and what a CTO is trying to solve for, it's, do you have a data strategy for Kubernetes? That extends then into a lot of different use cases of virtual machines or the AI components or all those things. But as you look to modernize your infrastructure, you need to be able to have clarity on all right, what are the best ways that we can tune this that provide us with the greatest level of flexibility, the greatest level of return, the most thoughtful degree of consideration of risk? And that's really just comes down to, did we work together well? And then did we express that not just in terms of this specific workload and what do you want to try to do with it, but over that multi-year journey, do you have a data strategy? Do you have the right partners and the right components to be able to define it in order to be able to get through it as fast as possible?
Yeah, I think there's a great point in there too. Like, when we think about originally bringing virtual machines to Kubernetes and to OpenShift, that did seem at the time like a bit of a crazy idea to some people, but some of those things that were table stakes for the virtualization market, like backup and restore, data protection, that we had to build to bring VMs in, that's actually made the platform better for container workloads as well, because eventually they've matured to the point where they need exactly the same things in terms of functionality.
And in many cases, I'm going to say CTOs have seen this a lot before, because even going way back before containers and all the rest to open systems, you went to open systems because you wanted to build neat stuff faster. You wanted to create competitive advantage and go through Agile and all that. But at a certain point, you also then needed a way to make those environments more stable. You needed a way to treat the data, to be able to protect the application, to be able to do those things. And that's what, working together with Red Hat, we enable now to do for the new platform. So people went from mainframe to open systems to be able to accelerate and create competitive advantage and to do more modern things more effortlessly. They then went to virtual machines. Now they're going to the next era of that strategy that says, all right, well, how much can we solve across our internal cloud, across the public clouds, across all these different avenues that's going to give us the best balance, the right infrastructure to unlock everything our developers are doing and give us that competitive advantage. And it's a neat era that we're in right now.
Now Portworx built its business really on providing a stateful storage capability to a stateless platform. What use case scenarios are most common where customers demand that kind of functionality?
What we see, and I'll go actually back to that data strategy aspect, because there's a question oftentimes internally of, all right, well, we have this extraordinary investment in our developers, in our engineering, and when you think about it, for a large financial institution, that might be 30 or 40,000 developers at an FTE cost of, let's say $240,000 a year. It's around $9 billion that they're investing in that extraordinary resource that they want to be able to unlock. And they want to be able to develop those applications on the most modern platforms in the most modern ways as they can, and they want to be able to do it efficiently. That means that they need data services that are available easily. That means that they need to be able to create and service and create an environment that's cloud-like, internally for those users so that they can provision what they need, create an environment, tear that down, move it through development to prod, and across specific applications or workloads, it's the gamut. Obviously you see all of the things happening with AI, but the extraordinary thing about Kubernetes is that it also is a more efficient platform to run applications on. Which means that for companies that are looking at data center capacity or at their environmental component, being able to fine-tune applications on a new platform means that they have greater control, better CPU utilization, better memory utilization, better utilization of their storage. They're building more efficient environments. Now, much of that, as Steve said, starts first with, well, what are we doing that's new and potentially is easy? To be able to just build that on that new platform. Replatforming is always a little bit more complicated. In those cases, you're starting with the applications that benefit most from the elasticity and scale that Kubernetes offers. So, going back to that financial services component, you might see a payments application. Something that has a lot of transaction load, a lot of complexity, that has the elasticity, but also that relationship to data, and they want to be able to create the most optimized version of that. Because it's central to their business, they need those elements, and they also need it to run efficiently. Other things can be heuristics, fraud detection. So we support one of the largest payments companies in the world, and they leverage our platform in order to be able to, make all of us feel really comfortable whenever we use our card, because the moment that we do, they're going through all of the analysis to say, hey, is there any risk in that transaction? So those types of workloads that require that complexity, the critical business services, But now as we go into the virtual machines and each of those things, it can be everything from the front of bank, your Windows environment, all of your Linux environment, and each of those elements. So it's a neat time.
It is indeed, and since we are talking about this neat moment in time, and being here at the Red Hat Summit and hearing so much about innovations that are taking place, Steve, I want to get a final thought from you about what we're going to be talking about at next year's Red Hat Summit.
So we got some kind of early parts of this, I think, in the keynote yesterday, which is we had some initial user stories of how people are really using the AI components to change their business. I think next year we will just have a wave of those, because there's a lot of excitement, a lot of enthusiasm in that area right now. There's a lot of product announcements, which of course, as a product guy, I'm very excited about. But I think the real excitement for me will be when we hear just the wave of stories of customers being successful, improving their business, using those technologies. I think that's what I'm really excited about for the next year or so. And the same goes for the virtualization part as well.
Excellent, great. A great note to end on. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
I'm Rebecca Knight for Paul Gillin. Stay tuned for more of theCUBE's live coverage of the Red Hat Summit. You're watching theCUBE, the leader in enterprise tech coverage.